The night was cold, darker than usual, and the air smelled of smoke and blood. The alien girl lay on the broken ground of a ruined street, her body weak and trembling. She had fought hard, but her wounds were too deep. Her silver skin was stained with dust and red marks, her breathing shallow. Her eyes, glowing faintly under the pale moon, slowly began to close. Around her, shadows moved. Soldiers in metal armor marched past without care. To them, she was nothing but another body. Another casualty of war. Her people had lost, her city had burned, and now she was left to die alone. Her hand weakly reached out as if searching for something, for someone, but no one came. Only silence. Only the sound of boots striking the ground as soldiers disappeared into the distance. Her chest rose and fell like the last flicker of a candle. She thought of her mother's voice, her people's songs, and the home she would never see again. Slowly, her eyes closed, her body surrendering to the dark. But then, through the silence, another sound broke in. A voice, strong yet soft, firm yet kind. "Don't close your eyes. Stay with me." Her heart reacted before her mind did. That voice was not from her people, not from any alien tongue she knew. It was human, and it was close. The alien girl blinked slowly, fighting to open her eyes through blurred vision. She saw a shape kneeling beside her. A human man covered in dirt, his jacket torn, his face scratched but alive with fire in his eyes. "You're not leaving me here," he whispered, pressing his hand against her wound. "Not tonight." She tried to speak, but only a weak sound left her lips. The human leaned closer, shaking his head. "Save your strength, I've got you." His voice was steady, yet his hands moved fast, desperate to stop the bleeding. He tore a strip from his own sleeve and pressed it against her injury. His breath was heavy, his heart racing, but he didn't stop. The girl's mind struggled to understand. Why would a human save her? Her people had told her humans were selfish, cruel, dangerous. Yet this man's hands trembled not from hate but from urgency. He cared if she lived, her body trembled, a tear sliding down her cheek. Not from pain but from confusion. She had been ready to die, ready to give in, but now, this strange human was dragging her back, pulling her away from death with nothing more than his voice. "Stay awake," he urged, brushing dirt from her face. "Look at me. Just look at me." Her eyes flickered. Heavy, but she forced them open. Drawn by the strength of his tone, she could not look away from him. His eyes were tired, yes, but fierce. Carrying a fire she had never seen before, he slid his arms under her body, lifting her from the cold stone ground. She was light in his grasp, too light, as if the life inside her was slipping away. He pressed her closer, shielding her from the wind. The street was still dangerous. Soldiers could return any moment, but the human didn't care. He carried her like something priceless, something he refused to lose. Her head rested against his shoulder, her eyes drifting shut again. But each time she slipped, his voice pulled her back. "Don't sleep, not yet, just a little longer." Her lips moved weakly, her voice a whisper. "Why?" The man's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked ahead. Scanning the ruined street for shelter, finally he spoke, low but firm. "Because no one deserves to die alone." The words struck her deeper than the pain in her wounds. Her people had abandoned her. Soldiers had ignored her. Yet this human, this stranger, refused to let her go. Her eyes filled with tears she could not stop. For the first time since the battle began, she felt something she thought was lost, hope. As he carried her into the dark, his steps heavy but unshaken, she realized something strange. She no longer feared the end. Because even if death still waited, this human's voice had already given her something worth holding on to. And so, with her fading strength, she clung to his words, her heart whispering back what her lips could not say. "Not while you're here." The night grew colder, the silence deeper. Yet one fragile truth remained. Her eyes stayed open, pulled back from death not by medicine or power, but by a human voice that refused to let her go. The night grew colder as the human carried the alien girl through the ruined streets. His boots crunched against broken glass, the smell of smoke and fire still heavy in the air. He knew soldiers could return at any moment, yet he refused to stop. The girl's head rested weakly against his shoulder. Her silver hair was tangled with ash, her glowing eyes half closed. Each breath she took sounded like it might be her last. Still, he spoke to her, his voice steady like a rope pulling her away from the edge. "You're safe with me, do you hear me? I won't let you die." She stirred, her lips moving, but no sound escaping. He tightened his hold, whispering again, "Stay awake. Just for a little longer." The human's name was Daniel. He had been a soldier once. But now he was only a man caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe the right place. He had seen her lying broken when everyone else walked past, and something inside him refused to let her be another forgotten body. Turning into a dark alley, Daniel pressed his back against the wall, listening. The sound of heavy boots echoed in the distance. Enemy patrol. He ducked behind rubble, holding her close, his heart pounded. Not from fear for himself, but fear for the fragile life in his arms. The alien girl's breathing hitched, a faint whimper leaving her lips. Daniel looked down, meeting her fading gaze. "I know it hurts, but you have to hold on. I promised you, didn't I?" Her eyes fluttered, her voice finally breaking through in a weak whisper. "Why, promise me?" Daniel swallowed hard, his throat tight. He didn't know how to explain it. He didn't know why he had stopped, why he had chosen her when there were countless others. But as he looked at her, pale and trembling, he found the answer in his own heart. "Because I couldn't walk away," he said softly. "Not from you, not tonight." The girl blinked slowly, her gaze searching his face. She had been raised to see humans as cold, selfish, always putting themselves first. Yet this man risked everything for her, a stranger. Her chest tightened, not just from pain, but from something new, confusion mixed with hope. Daniel pushed forward, moving through shadows until he found the cracked remains of an old building. The roof was half gone, walls broken, but it was shelter. He slipped inside, laying her gently against a slab of stone. Her body shivered, her skin cold under his touch. He removed his own jacket and placed it around her, ignoring the chill that hit him immediately. Then he knelt and checked her wound. "Blood still seeping through the makeshift bandage, damn it," he muttered under his breath. His hands shaking, he pressed harder to slow the bleeding. "You're not leaving me, do you hear me?" "Not while I'm here." The girl's lips curved faintly, almost a ghost of a smile. Her voice, weak but clear enough, whispered, "Human, stubborn." Daniel let out a small laugh, bitter and soft. "Yeah, I've been told that before," she coughed. The sound painful, but her eyes stayed on him, watching as he worked with nothing but cloth and determination. She had seen healers before, professionals with advanced tools, yet none of them had ever looked at her the way he did, like her life mattered, like she wasn't just another body to save or lose. For a moment, silence filled the broken room, only their breathing echoing against the stone. Then outside voices rang out, soldiers searching. Daniel froze, listening as heavy boots marched closer. The alien girl's eyes widened in fear, her weak hand clutching at his arm. He covered her hand with his, squeezing gently. "Don't be afraid. I'm here," he whispered, leaning close to her ear. "I won't let them take you." She stared at him, tears gathering in her glowing eyes. For the first time she believed him. She didn't know why, but she did. The voices passed by. Fading into the distance, Daniel let out a shaky breath, relief washing over him. He looked back at her, brushing damp strands of hair from her face. "You see? We made it through just like I said." Her lips parted, her voice barely audible. "Promise." "Again?" Daniel nodded firmly, his eyes locked on hers. "I promise. As long as I'm breathing, you'll live too." The words sank deep into her, more powerful than any medicine. Her eyes grew heavy once more, but not with surrender this time, with trust. She drifted, her mind balancing between pain and rest, but the echo of his voice held her steady. She had been left to die once, but not anymore. Daniel leaned back, exhaustion weighing on him, but his resolve stronger than ever. He had chosen this path, chosen her, and he would not fail outside. The city still burned, enemies still hunted, but inside that broken shelter something new had begun. A fragile bond, a human's promise, and a girl's fading strength slowly turning into hope. And though the night was long and the danger far from over, one truth was certain: she was not alone, not anymore. The broken shelter was quiet except for the sound of her shallow breaths. Daniel sat near her, back against the wall, his eyes never leaving the alien girl. His body ached, his hands were bruised, but he didn't care. All that mattered was keeping her alive. He had cleaned her wound as best as he could with scraps of cloth and water from his flask. The bleeding had slowed, but her skin was still pale, her body trembling from fever. Daniel pressed his jacket tighter around her, even though the cold bit into his own skin. The girl's glowing eyes opened slightly, weak but curious. She looked at him for a long moment before whispering, "Why, still here?" Daniel leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. His voice was quiet but firm. "Because you're still breathing, and as long as you're breathing, I won't leave you." Her lips curved faintly, as if she wanted to smile but didn't know how. She had expected him to abandon her once the danger passed. That was the way of the world. No one risked themselves for a stranger. Yet here he was, still at her side. You don't know me, she whispered again, her words fragile. Why save me? Daniel thought about it, his jaw tightening. Maybe I don't need a reason. Maybe it's enough that you needed help. The girl's eyes softened, confusion mixing with something warmer. She turned her head slightly, staring at the broken ceiling. Her people had always taught her that survival meant thinking only of yourself. But this human broke that rule with every breath. A sudden noise outside made Daniel tense. He stood quickly, moving to the edge of the shattered doorway. His hand gripped a piece of broken metal, sharp enough to serve as a weapon through the night. Faint lights moved, enemy patrols still searching. Their voices carried across the empty street. Harsh and cold, Daniel's heart pounded. He glanced back at the girl, her body still too weak to move. If they found this place, there would be no escape. He pressed a finger to his lips. Signaling her to stay silent, she nodded weakly. Her glowing eyes wide with fear, the soldiers passed. Their shadows stretching across the walls. Daniel didn't move. Didn't breathe until the sound of boots finally faded into the distance. Only then did he return to her side. You're safe, he said softly, lowering the makeshift weapon. Her small hand trembled as it reached for his sleeve, catching it lightly. You risked life for me. Daniel looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face. I told you. I'm not leaving you, he said, his tone steady. Not now. Not ever. The words made her chest tighten, a strange warmth spreading through her despite the fever. For the first time since she fell, she didn't feel like a dying soldier. She felt. As hours passed slowly, the cold grew sharper. The night deeper. Daniel stayed awake, watching over her, every time her eyes began to close. He spoke to her, pulling her back. Don't drift off. Not yet, he would whisper. Keep fighting. I'm right here, and every time. She listened. Her body might have been weak, but his voice anchored her. His words became the rope tying her to life. At one point she whispered, your voice. It keeps me awake, Daniel smiled faintly, though his eyes were tired. Then I'll keep talking. As long as you need me. Silence stretched for a moment. Then her voice came again, softer than before. My name is Lyra? Daniel blinked, surprised. He hadn't expected her to share that. He repeated it carefully. Lyra. The name felt strange but right on his tongue. Her lips curved again, this time a little more clearly. She had told him her name, something she hadn't done with anyone since the war began. Daniel nodded, his voice low but certain. Well, Lyra, you're not dying tonight. Not while I'm here. Her eyes glistened. Not with pain this time, but with something new. She had been abandoned on the street, left for dead. Yet this human carried her, healed her, and even now promised her life when she had already accepted death. The night stretched on, and slowly the fear began to ease. Outside, the soldiers still searched, but inside the broken shelter, something had changed. Daniel had made a promise, and Lyra had given him her name. Between them, a fragile trust had begun, born in darkness and blood, and though danger still waited beyond the walls, Lyra no longer felt alone. She no longer felt forgotten, because in the cold silence, a human's voice had become her light. The shelter was silent, broken walls guarding them like the ribs of a dying beast. Daniel sat awake, his back stiff, his hands gripping the shard of metal he had taken as a weapon. He hadn't closed his eyes once. Lyra lay nearby, her silver skin pale, her breath shallow yet steadier than before. His jacket still covered her, her glowing eyes half closed. But she wasn't asleep every time she tried. His voice pulled her back. She clung to it like a lifeline. Outside, the city was alive with danger. Distant flames lit the night sky, black smoke curling into the stars. Soldiers prowled through alleys, their boots striking stone like the heartbeat of war. Suddenly the sound came closer this time. Voices, harsh and sharp, filled the empty street beyond the broken walls. Daniel's body tensed. He crouched lower, pressing himself against the cracked stone. His eyes narrowed, scanning through a gap in the wall. Figures moved, 3 soldiers, armored, rifles in their hands. Their lights cut through the darkness, beams sweeping across the ruins. Lyra's trembling hand caught his arm, her glowing eyes wide with fear. He leaned down, pressing a finger to her lips, whispering, "Shh, stay quiet." Her heart raced, but she nodded. Her trust in him outweighed the fear. The soldiers stopped just outside. One of them raised a scanner, a soft pulse lighting the street. Daniel's chest tightened. If they entered the shelter, it would be over. He held his breath. Every muscle coiled like a spring. His mind screamed to run, but his body refused to leave her side. He would not abandon her. Heat signature detected, one soldier muttered, his voice metallic through the helmet. Daniel cursed under his breath. He could feel Lyra trembling. She tried to whisper, "Go, leave me." He turned sharply to her, his voice a low growl. Not happening. The soldiers drew closer, their boots crunching on stone. Lights scanned the broken doorway. Daniel gripped the shard tighter, sweat running down his face. For a moment, everything slowed. Lyra's eyes closed weakly. She thought this was the end. But then Daniel's voice came again, fierce and unyielding. "Stay with me, Lyra. Don't give up." Her eyes opened at the sound. Her heart beat faster, and something inside her refused to let go. The soldiers stepped into the doorway. Their lights pierced the dark. One beam landed on Daniel's face, human. One of them barked, rifle snapping up. Daniel didn't think. His body moved on instinct. He lunged forward. Swinging the metal shard, the soldier fired. The shot grazing Daniel's arm but missing his chest. The shard slashed across the soldier's visor. Sparks flying, the man fell back, screaming, "Contact!" Another soldier shouted, raising his rifle. Daniel grabbed the fallen soldier's weapon and fired wildly. The blast hit the second one, dropping him to the ground. Lyra gasped, trying to sit up, her body too weak. She could only watch as the human fought like a man possessed. His movements weren't perfect, but they were desperate, and desperation gave him strength. The last soldier charged forward, tackling Daniel against the wall. The rifle clattered across the floor. Both men struggled, fists slamming, armor against flesh. Daniel's knuckles bled as he struck. Again and again, his jaw burned from a hit. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. "Daniel!" Lyra's voice broke through the chaos. Weak but sharp. He heard her, and it fueled him with a final roar. He rammed the soldier's head against the wall. The helmet cracked and the man collapsed. Silent, breathing hard, Daniel staggered back, blood dripping from his arm. He looked at Lyra immediately. His first thought wasn't victory, it was her. "Are you okay?" he asked, rushing to her side. She shook her head weakly, her eyes on the fallen soldiers. "You fought for me." Daniel knelt, brushing dirt from her cheek. His voice was rough but steady. "I told you, I won't let anyone take you." Tears filled her eyes. Not just from fear, but from something deeper. No one had ever spoken like that to her before. No one had ever chosen her over their own safety. "You're different," she whispered, her hand brushing weakly against his. Daniel smiled faintly, though pain burned through his arm. Or maybe this is just what being human means. Outside, more voices echoed, reinforcements. The gunfire had drawn attention. They didn't have long. Daniel grabbed the weapon from the floor and slung it over his shoulder. Then he lifted Lyra gently into his arms again. Her body was light, her warmth pressed against his chest. She whispered faintly, "You'll die if you keep protecting me." Daniel's eyes hardened as he stepped into the shadows of the alley. "Then I'll die standing, not leaving you behind." The words cut through her fear like a blade through chains. She closed her eyes, not in surrender, but in trust. The hunt was far from over, soldiers were still coming. The city was still burning, but one truth echoed louder than the chaos. Lyra was no longer just a dying stranger. She was someone Daniel had chosen to fight for, and nothing in the galaxy would make him break that promise. The night stretched long, and the ruined city whispered with danger. Daniel's arm ached where the bullet had grazed him, blood still soaking through the torn fabric. Yet he pressed forward, carrying Lyra in his arms once again. Her breathing was shallow, but her glowing eyes stayed open. Watching his face every time she looked at him, something inside her shifted. He was not her enemy, not the monster her people had described. He was something else. Finally, Daniel found another hiding place, a collapsed house with one half still standing. He lowered her gently onto a pile of broken cloth, his hands careful. His chest rose and fell like he had just run a marathon. "We can't stay long," he whispered, scanning the darkness beyond the broken wall. "They'll keep searching." Lyra's weak voice broke the silence. "You should let me go. They want me, not you." Daniel turned sharply, his jaw set. "Not a chance." Her lips trembled, her glowing eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "You don't understand, Daniel. I'm not just anyone." He froze, the way she said his name sending a shiver through him. "What do you mean?" Lyra took a shaky breath, her chest rising weakly. I am not a soldier. I was never meant to fight. I am the daughter of the High Chancellor. Daniel's eyes widened, the words striking him like thunder. He stepped back, struggling to process. The Chancellor, her father, was the leader of her entire people, the one who had waged war against humans, the one whose face was broadcast across every news screen. You're telling me you're his daughter? Daniel whispered, his voice low but sharp. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again, her voice steady despite her weakness. Yes, my name is Lyra Seraphis, Princess of the Seraphian Union. If I die, this war will never end. My father will burn everything in his grief. Daniel's mind spun. His heart hammered. He had thought he was saving just one girl, one stranger he couldn't leave behind. But this changed everything. You're saying, Daniel said slowly, that saving you could stop a war. Lyra nodded faintly, her hand clutching his sleeve. And losing me will make it worse. Soldiers hunt me not just because I'm wounded, but because I carry the hope of my people. If the humans are blamed for my death, nothing will stop the bloodshed. Daniel stared at her, the weight of her words sinking deep. He had been fighting on instinct, driven by his promise not to leave her, but now he understood. Her life was more than just hers. It was tied to thousands, maybe millions. He knelt beside her, brushing dirt from her cheek gently, his voice steady but softer than before. Then you have to live, Lyra. Not just for yourself, but for everyone. I'll get you out of here, I swear it. Her eyes shimmered, tears falling down her silver skin. Why would you do this for me? You're human. My people killed yours. They burned your cities. Why save me? Daniel's gaze hardened, but his voice didn't waver. Because someone has to break the cycle, and right now, that someone is me. Lyra's breath caught. Her chest ached, but not from her wounds. His words struck her deeper than any weapon. He wasn't saving her because of politics or power or even her title. He was saving her because it was the right thing to do. For the first time since the war began, Lyra felt a strange hope rise inside her. Maybe peace wasn't just a dream. Maybe it was real, and it had begun here, with one stubborn human who refused to let her die. Daniel shifted, pulling the weapon closer to him. His eyes scanned the streets. They'll be back soon, and when they come, we'll be ready. Lyra's weak hand touched his wrist, her voice fragile but determined. You can't fight them all. You'll die. Daniel looked down at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Then I'll die making sure you live. And if that means giving you a chance to stop this war, then it's worth it. Her throat tightened, her voice breaking. Daniel, I don't want you to die for me. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. His whisper was fierce, unshakable. Then live, Lyra, live, and make it mean something. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't despair. It was a fragile bond, stronger than fear, stronger than war. Lyra closed her eyes, not from weakness but from resolve. She had been ready to surrender to death, but Daniel's voice had dragged her back, and now his promise gave her something else, purpose. The sound of boots echoed again in the distance. Closer this time, Daniel rose to his feet, weapon in hand. His eyes burned with determination. The hunt was not over. The danger was greater than ever. But now both of them knew the truth. Lyra Seraphis was no ordinary alien girl, and Daniel, the stubborn human, had just become the guardian of peace itself. The city burned like a dying star. Flames swallowed rooftops, smoke curled into the night. The air was thick with ash, glowing embers drifting down like cruel snowflakes. Daniel adjusted his grip on Lyra, holding her close to his chest as he stepped carefully through the ruins. His arm ached from the bullet graze. His body screamed for rest, but he refused to stop. Lyra's glowing eyes stayed half open, her head resting weakly against him. Her wound still bled slowly beneath his makeshift bandages, yet her voice came soft but steady. You can't carry me forever. Daniel. He looked down at her, his jaw tight. Watch me. Her lips curved faintly. A fragile smile. She no longer argued. Deep inside she believed him. But danger crept closer. Boots echoed in the streets, distant shouts cutting through the roar of fire. The enemy wasn't giving up. They were hunting her like wolves chasing wounded prey. Daniel ducked into a narrow alley, pressing his back against the wall. He set Lyra down gently, crouching to meet her gaze. They're closing in, he whispered, his voice low but urgent. I need you to trust me. No matter what happens, her trembling hand caught his wrist. I already do. The words hit him harder than any bullet. He nodded once, determination settling like iron. He searched the shadows, spotting a narrow passage leading toward the city's outer edge. Smoke and fire poured from collapsed buildings. The way was dangerous, but it was their only chance. Stay low, he whispered as he lifted her again. And hold on. They moved through the ruins, Daniel stepping over rubble, weaving between collapsed walls. Every sound seemed too loud. The crunch of broken glass under his boots, the faint wheeze of Lyra's breath, the crack of fire eating through wood. Suddenly, voices erupted ahead. Shadows flickered against the flames. Soldiers armed and waiting. Daniel froze. Pressing himself against the wall, his mind raced. They were trapped, soldiers ahead, fire behind, and Lyra too weak to run. He glanced down at her, her eyes wide with fear. She whispered, "Leave me, Daniel, save yourself." He shook his head violently, his whisper fierce, "Don't ever say that again. I promised you, remember?" Her tears glistened in the firelight. "You'll die for me." His eyes burned, his voice steel. "Then I'll die keeping my word." The soldiers drew closer. Their rifles raised, Daniel gritted his teeth. He set Lyra gently on the ground, placing her behind a broken wall. "Stay hidden," he whispered. His hand brushed her cheek briefly. "No matter what, don't close your eyes. Stay with me." Lyra's voice trembled. "Daniel." But he was already moving. His body low, weapon clutched tight. He stepped into the glow of firelight, and the soldiers turned. "Human," one barked, rifle snapping up. Daniel fired first. The blast cracking through the night, the soldier dropped, but the others returned fire instantly. Sparks erupted against stone as Daniel dove behind rubble. Shots whistled past, flames roared, Daniel's pulse thundered. He fired again, forcing them back. His movements were desperate but sharp, survival pushing him beyond exhaustion. From her hiding place, Lyra watched with wide eyes. Her heart pounded with every shot. Every time he staggered, she thought he would fall. But then his voice echoed in her memory. "Don't close your eyes, stay with me." Something inside her refused to let him stand alone. With trembling hands, she reached for a broken metal rod lying nearby. Her body weak but her will sharp, when one soldier flanked Daniel. Raising his weapon for a killing shot, Lyra pushed herself forward, driving the rod into his leg. The soldier screamed, collapsing. Daniel turned instantly, finishing him with a blast. "Lyra!" Daniel shouted, rushing to her side, his face pale with panic. "I told you to stay hidden." Her voice shook, but her eyes blazed. "And leave you? Never." For a heartbeat, he just stared at her. Then he let out a short laugh, despite the danger. Stubborn. Just like me, he pulled her up again, cradling her against him. His heart raced, but his steps grew faster. He pushed through the broken street, fire licking at the walls around them. Behind them, the surviving soldiers regrouped, shouts filling the air. They were still being hunted. Daniel's eyes locked on a distant tower crumbling in the fire. Beyond it lay the city's outer gates, their only chance of escape. But as he pressed forward, another shadow emerged, an armored figure stepping through the flames. Taller, heavier, his rifle glowing with advanced tech. This one was different. Not just a soldier, but a commander. "You can't run. Human." The commander's voice boomed through the smoke. "Hand her over, and I'll grant you a quick death." Daniel tightened his grip on Lyra, his voice steady, unyielding. "Not happening." The commander raised his weapon, firelight gleaming off his armor. Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking to Lyra. "Hold on to me," he whispered, his voice softer for her alone. "No matter what happens, don't let go." Her arms tightened weakly around his neck. Her voice was faint but fierce. "I won't." The flames raged, the city crumbled, and death stood before them in steel and fire. But Daniel's promise still burned brighter. He would not give her up. Not now, not ever. The commander stepped through the flames like a shadow of death. His heavy boots crushed burning embers beneath him. His glowing rifle aimed directly at Daniel and Lyra. Daniel's breath came ragged, his body bruised and bleeding. Yet his grip on Lyra never faltered. She clung to him weakly, her head resting against his shoulder. "You cannot win," the commander's voice thundered, metallic and cold. "Hand her over, human, or I will burn you where you stand." Daniel's jaw clenched, his eyes blazing through the smoke. "You want her? You'll have to go through me first," the commander laughed. A deep, cruel sound. "Foolish, you fight for a cause that is not yours? You will die for nothing." Daniel adjusted his hold on Lyra. Setting her gently against a wall of rubble, his hand brushed her face briefly, his voice low. "Stay awake, Lyra. Don't you dare give up now." Her eyes flickered open, her voice trembling. "Daniel, you can't face him alone." He smiled faintly, though his heart thundered. "I've been alone before, but this time, I've got a reason to fight." He rose to his feet, rifle in hand. Standing between Lyra and the towering commander, the fire roared around them. Painting the world in red and gold, the first shot rang out. The commander's rifle cracked, sparks exploding as the blast struck the stone near Daniel. Daniel dove, rolling behind rubble, then returned fire. The two clashed in a storm of light and sound. Each shot echoed like thunder, rubble exploding, flames scattering. Daniel's body screamed with pain, but his will held firm every time he wanted to collapse. He remembered Lyra's faint whisper, "Stay with me." The commander's strength was overwhelming. His armor deflected glancing shots, his movements precise and merciless. But Daniel fought with something more: desperation, determination, and the unyielding promise he had made. Lyra watched through blurred vision, her heart clenched with every near miss. She could feel her strength slipping, her body urging her to let go. Yet Daniel's voice echoed in her mind. "Don't close your eyes, stay awake, I'm right here." The words became her anchor once more. She forced her eyes open, watching him fight, and whispered weakly, "Daniel, you can do this." Her voice reached him even through the chaos. He glanced back for a fraction of a second, saw her glowing eyes locked on him, and something inside him surged. With a roar, Daniel charged forward, tackling the commander. Both men crashed into the rubble, fists and steel colliding. The commander struck him across the face, stars bursting in Daniel's vision, but Daniel didn't stop. He slammed his elbow into the commander's visor, cracking it. "You're not taking her," Daniel growled, his voice raw. The commander shoved him back, raising his weapon for the final blow. Time seemed to slow. Lyra's heart pounded, and her voice broke through the fire and smoke. "Daniel!" The human's eyes snapped open, strength flooding his veins at the sound of her cry. With one last surge, he grabbed a broken steel beam from the rubble and swung with all his might. The impact shattered the commander's weapon, sparks flying as it exploded in his hands. The force threw the armored giant back into the flames. His scream echoed as fire swallowed him whole. Silence followed, broken only by Daniel's heavy breaths. He dropped the beam, his body trembling, his vision blurred, his knees buckling. But he stumbled back toward Lyra, falling beside her. Her hand reached weakly for his, gripping it with what little strength she had left. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "You kept your promise." Daniel smiled faintly, though his face was pale, his voice was soft but firm. "Told you. Not while I'm here." Her eyes filled with light, her heart pounding in that moment. She realized his voice hadn't just saved her from death. It had saved her soul. It had shown her a truth she had never known. Humans were not the monsters she had been taught to fear. They were something else, something stronger. "Rest, Lyra," Daniel whispered, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "You'll live, and when you do, you'll change everything." Her lips trembled, but her eyes stayed open, glowing brighter despite her weakness. She squeezed his hand, her voice breaking. "I swear it, Daniel, I will tell them. I will tell everyone what you did." Beyond the city, dawn began to rise. The fire still burned, but the first light of morning cut through the smoke. Lyra leaned close, her forehead resting against his. Her whisper was fragile but filled with power. "You saved me, you saved more than me. You saved hope." Daniel's eyes closed briefly, his hand tightening around hers. His body finally gave in to exhaustion, but his promise still burned in her heart. As soldiers' shouts echoed faintly in the distance, Lyra pressed her weak hand against his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath. Her tears fell, but they were not of despair. They were of gratitude, of strength, because she knew the truth now. The war would not be decided by armies or weapons or politics. It would be decided by voices, by promises, by the unbreakable spirit of one human who refused to let her die. And as the sun broke fully over the horizon, Lyra whispered the words that would echo across her people, across the stars, not while he was here,